It's
So
not
many
in
versions.
device settings. If you're in device settings, you went too far.
Show device settings. See that.
All right, friends. Well, it is by my watch 6:06, so we will go ahead and get started. I was really just smiling to myself because what a team building moment when everyone's trying to help support each other technically as we navigate our hybrid world, right? So always a point of growth. It's so good to see you. I'm sorry I missed last month, but we will jump right in. Kate, do we have a quorum?
Oh, you're putting Kate right on the spot.
Yeah.
Wow,
that's
really trial by
50%.
fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trial by fire. 50% of the board membership, which looks like we do.
That looks right.
That was 2/3.
Man, you're putting me on the spot too. I'm out of practice. We'll confirm.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I believe there at least have to be 7 of us. So, okay. So we will move forward. We want to first of all welcome our friends, anyone who's a guest, but Whitney Leeds, thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you. I know that food access has been something that Bev and Refugio and others have really brought to the table. And so we know your work at Growing Homes is really critical to our community. And we are going to hear from you. And friends, we've shifted the order of the agenda a little bit just so we can honor Whitney's time. So Whitney, please, Kate, if we could authorize Whitney to share screen, that would be great.
You should be all set. Yep, I saw that. Hi, everybody. I'm Whitney Leeds. I'm just going to get into our presentation. Can folks see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I'm just going to introduce myself really quickly, and then we'll kind of jump right into it. I know that y'all have a whole bunch of stuff on the agenda today, so I really appreciate your time. My name is Whitney Leeds. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Advocacy and Community Organizing Manager with Growing Home. Ordinarily, you would see more community members of ours here with me today to present. But because of some scheduling issues, we weren't able to get other folks. But without, wanting to delay us anymore, I wanted to be able to get at least as much information as I can to all of you as possible right now. So we're going to talk a little bit about the issue that we're seeing, who's been impacted, how folks have been impacted in the neighborhood. And this is really about, food access issues in the South Westminster area. We're going to talk a little bit about issues with the big box corporate stores, and then what we see with the corner stores as well that are still in an area. And then talk a little bit about what the response has been from our community members and really what we're doing to try and address all of the, this whole situation. So to kind of situate you with where this started, at the end of July last year, so just under a year ago, we lost the one neighborhood supermarket that we had, which is the Walmart market that was at 72nd Federal. This is not a photo of it, but apparently there have been many abandoned Walmarts all over the country. So there's images to share that are not necessarily our location, but that's the idea. So in terms of who's been impacted in that immediate vicinity, I know many of you probably know that area fairly well, but just to kind of review, right? We have several Maker public housing communities that were right across the street. That is home to a lot of seniors, a lot of people with disabilities, low-income individuals, and low-income families with small children, a good number of unhoused people as well, many of whom congregate at the Irving Street Library. And in that area, there is public transit, but it is not necessarily straightforward to access that. We have also folks that are impacted that are in that Federal Boulevard corridor that's not technically part of the city of Westminster, but it's also not part of any other municipality either. It's just unincorporated Adams County, and has very few folks advocating for them there because it's not part of a municipality. And the folks that are impacted by the closure of that Walmart stretch all the way down to the Regis University neighborhood, as we've learned, as we've worked with folks from Regis. And then also Growing Homes Food Pantry has been impacted as well. We've seen an uptick in the number of people that are coming to get groceries at our food pantry. So we conducted a study in October and November of this past year in 2021. and collected surveys to kind of figure out what was the initial impact of the loss of that supermarket in the neighborhood. What we saw was 94% of people that filled out that survey had used that Walmart as their primary grocery store, and that has created food access issues for them as a result. Many people lost their pharmacy and money services. We have job loss for low and middle level employees from the community. Now, some of you may know that Walmart offered positions to most, if not all, of the staff that were working at the location in other Walmart locations. But it's important to understand that even when a corporation does that, that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't experience job loss, right? Because there are people that don't have transportation to get to those farther away stores. And certainly for us, public transit is an issue in this community, because even though there is, the 72 bus, it doesn't necessarily mean that people can actually afford to take that bus line. And that's something that we're also trying to look at how we might be able to address as well. 50% of our respondents reported that they were struggling to make it to the next closest store. Almost 40% of people that filled out the survey did not have access to a vehicle of their own. And for many people, that public transit, as I said, is prohibitively expensive. And then those other small corner stores that are in the area, they're still there. But there's a whole number of issues that are plaguing those stores that we also asked for folks to kind of give us information about. What is it like at the corner stores? Are you able to shop at those corner stores that are still in the area? And what we found is that those just aren't meeting people's food needs, right? 78% of people said that they could not get nutritious food at those stores. And you can see in this photo, this isn't one of those local stores, but this is the kind of food that you could see in a 7-Eleven and in a gas station. The stores that are still in, many of them that are still in that area, this is kind of what you're limited to, right? 88% that they said they have poor selection. 82% said that those stores are too costly. We know anecdotally that those premises are often filthy and infested. Many of them don't have culturally relevant food. And then we had a large number of people who reported that those stores aren't open when they need them. So we have a lot of folks in the community that they're working, 2 or 3 jobs. They can't get to the store just anytime whenever the store happens to be open. And so a lot of people are experiencing this crunch where they may only be able to do their grocery shopping early in the morning or late at night, and the stores are no longer open for them. We also know that even though there is still a pharmacy that's in the neighborhood, it's a Walgreens pharmacy, and the prices on some of those prescriptions are much higher than they were at Walmart. We have folks that are diabetics, and to get their diabetes medication is almost double the cost at the Walgreens as it was from the Walmart pharmacy just catty corner from there across the street. And we also, need to consider as well the time tax, right? Being poor sucks time from people, right? It takes time to get to these other stores. It takes time when you have to go to multiple stores instead of just being able to get everything in one place. And it takes time to, go to a food pantry. It takes time to go and apply for rental assistance, right? All of these things take time that people who are more financially equipped don't have to experience that time tax. So that's something that we try and always take into account at Growing Home as well. And then a lack of accessibility is really important. Some of you may know about the Save a Lot. That's probably the next biggest grocer in the neighborhood that's still there. We know from shopping there that the produce there is not fresh. A lot of it is spoiling on the shelves. It's not a reasonable place to try and get your all of your groceries from. It's also expensive. And in a place like that, where you may be able to pick up more than 2 or 3 things, if you're a person with a disability, or you're a senior, or you might have other kinds of mobility issues, they don't have those motorized wheelchairs that a lot of the big box stores have. And so if you have to walk around on your feet to get all of that food and then stand in line for 20 minutes, a lot of people are not able physically to accomplish that. And so that's also a major concern that we're looking into as well. The big box stores, though, even though they do have those, the motorized wheelchairs, they create a whole bunch of other kinds of issues, right? And for this community, which is a community that is predominantly low income, when those big box stores come in, the majority of those profits and those dividends, they're not coming back to our community, right? Those are being funneled out of our community. and going to places where the heads of those corporations live. And in a low-income community, we simply can't afford to lose all of that wealth, right? They're also very difficult to retain, even if we may be able to put together an incentive to get them to come to the neighborhood. As soon as that incentive dries up, there's nothing that will keep them here. And certainly we've seen that with a lot of grocers leaving Westminster just in general, including beyond our own neighborhood. And they don't tell us ahead of time when they're going to leave, right? So when the signs were posted about 3 or 4 days ahead of time saying, hey, we're closing the store, come clean out our shelves, the city of Westminster wasn't alerted ahead of time. The county wasn't alerted ahead of time. Nobody with any ability to sort of act around this issue even had enough notice to be able to do that, right? And they're obviously not considering the impact to the community when they just sort of ghost us, right? When they just sort of leave unexpectedly. So what are we doing about this, right? We're stuck in a neighborhood at this point that no longer has a grocery store. We're seeing an uptick in the needs in terms of our food pantry. And we have people as well in the community that don't want to go to a food pantry, right? Many people, sometimes because of pride, sometimes because they want to feel independent, right? Lots of people just don't use food pantries, even if they need them. And so we find that folks are in a fairly dire situation. So we know that the store closed at the end of July of 2021. As soon as those signs were posted up, community members that were very active with Growing Home immediately came to us and said, we have to do something about this. This keeps happening. It's happened over and over again. We just get sort of abandoned. It's kind of this revolving door issue where, a few months we might have a store, a couple of years we might have a store, and then they disappear again. And so it's become incredibly frustrating for the people that are living in that community as well. And so they knew immediately that they wanted to do something. We had our first meeting in August of 2021 to address this issue of food justice and food access. At that point, we kind of got together, figured out what are the goals that we have, what do we want to be able to see, who are the targets, who are the people that are able to kind of, move things and make things happen here. And we also, decided that, we need to have a set of values from which we're all operating so that everybody is kind of on the same page in terms of the direction that we're going and how we want to do that. And then we had that first survey that I shared with you some of those survey results. October and November of 2021. We conducted a second survey as well in January of this year. And then we have a ton of research that's kind of ongoing. So what the group has identified primarily, and this is the vast majority of folks are people that live in that community, so that are living in the South Westminster community. Many of those folks are Spanish speaking, which reflects the demographics of that neighborhood as well. And really the long-term idea, the hope is to be able to set up our own kind of community-based grocer, right? Something that's not just going to disappear in a couple of years when they decide, you know what, I don't like this neighborhood anymore. People who are grounded here that know that they're going to stay here, who are part of this community, want to be able to create their own grocery store so that we have that kind of staying power and so that we can keep that wealth in this community as well and continue to build on that. But we know that creating something like that, we also know that it will hopefully have some kind of co-op structure so that it is owned by the workers, owned by the community in which it is. And so that way also those dividends are coming back in to really build the economic wealth of this community. But we know that that's going to take a few years, right? So we're also that January 2022 survey that you see on those possible short-term solutions is really looking at, we've in doing a ton of research on food systems, on food access issues, and the solutions that have been created across the country, really and across the world to address this same issue. A lot of ideas have come up that are not quite as complicated as setting up our own grocery store. And so we're also looking at some of those as well because we know that the need in the community is urgent, it is immediate. And so we want to try and address some of that need, even though we won't be able to address all of it, while in the long, we work on this longer term goal of creating a food co-op or a food nonprofit grocer or something like that. So that second survey was really looking at among the potential sort of more short-term type of solution project ideas, which are the ones that people in this community would actually use, right? And so we had a whole list of them, and we kind of narrowed it down to 3 top contenders, and are continuing to do research to figure out which among those 3 contenders is going to make the most sense for us. So the goals that I was kind of talking about that the community members have put together is they're pretty straightforward, right? Some of these, you'll look at this and it's fairly intuitive, right? We want accessible food and necessities. And we want it to be high quality. That means local, it means fresh, it means as organic as possible. We want a good variety that's culturally relevant. And that's environmentally conscious too, right? We don't want all of our food to come from places that are using fertilizers and other kinds of chemicals that are just going to continue to degrade the environment and make it harder in the long run for us to continue to meet those food goals. The prices need to be affordable, right? This is the low income community. We need to be able to accept SNAP, EBT, WIC. I'm having a meeting in a few days with someone from the city of Denver who's interested in creating some kind of SNAP-like program for people who are just within that margin that aren't eligible, but who still have unmet food needs. So we're excited to see where kind of that might go as well. And then when it comes to accessibility, we're looking at, really meeting the needs of the folks that have been, or rather the needs that have been identified by the folks in the community, right? That means having, operating hours at those odd hours that the other stores aren't open, right? And it also means those motorized wheelchairs and other forms of assistance for people that might have physical mobility, disability type of issues. And then, as we kind of mentioned, being able to build the economic wealth of this neighborhood is extremely important for us as well, right? We want it to be socially conscious, but we also want it to be very community centric, where the money is staying here and it's not just being siphoned out. And then it's important to us also to be able to provide complementary services. And as we do more investigation and research on this, we're starting to learn that, grocery is not a particularly big money-making industry, unfortunately. And the way that the food systems are set up, it is very difficult to turn a profit, right? And so a lot of these, smaller grocers, they become more successful when they have kind of companion businesses that are connected to them, right? So maybe they have a community kitchen where, folks with catering services, but that maybe don't have their own commercial kitchen, can come and rent out a commercial kitchen space that you might have there. Or where you also where you also sell other kinds of goods, or provide health services, health and wellness services, so that you have additional revenue coming in to kind of meet the needs and really be able to do that. And then some of what we've seen elsewhere as well is they actually use these spaces to help incubate small businesses, which, for us, given how much we care about, the wealth of the neighborhood and building that economic wealth, and that's a very exciting idea. So how we're operating, there's a number of committees that have kind of come together that are working on different aspects of this. The education committee is responsible for a lot of this research and investigation. Obviously, you saw about the surveys. We're also base building to make sure that we're really reaching out and engaging as many people in the neighborhood as possible, and also trying to build kind of a long-term and short-term strategy that not only incorporates and is led by our community members who are most directly impacted by this issue, but also incorporates those large institutional stakeholders in the neighborhood that also care about this issue and have something to offer. So the city, for example, Regis University, Tri-County Health Department, Adams County, Centura Health has been very interested and concerned about this as well. So those large, really engaging with those large institutional stakeholders to make sure that everybody's kind of moving in the same direction, and that also we're all, contributing what we can when we can in the way that we can. I'm not going to go through this entire slide. There's a lot of organizations on here, but just to give you a sense, I know a lot of folks are always like, are you doing this work in a bubble? And I hope that this slide encourages you to understand that, no, we are not. We have been working with a lot of different partners around the state, around the country, really to get a better understanding of what it is that we're doing, what we need to understand about this before we step into, creating something new. And also, there are a lot of partnership opportunities as well. Other organizations that have addressed this issue in their own communities, who we can partner with, who can even potentially bring their services to the Southwestern neighborhood. And, that collaboration is really, really key for us, because obviously we won't be able to do any of this on our own. And obviously it's also why I'm here today talking to you good people as well, because we really want to make sure that we're engaging with the right people at the right time. All right. So if you have other questions after today, I don't know how much time we have left over for questions, but this is my contact information. You're welcome to shoot me an email or give me a call, or you can also text that phone number as well. Definitely, if folks are interested in getting engaged with this and involved with this, we would be very, very interested. So thank you so much for your time.
Whitney, thank you very much for just painting such a comprehensive picture for us. This is something that we have noted for a while. I think Bev and Refugio have brought this sort of to our attention. Of course, others have as well. This really validates some of the information that I know we're hearing, but it also, to me, just strikes at the urgency of the fact that many of our community members do not have access to quality food source. So I know we have some questions, so if you have a little bit of time, we'd love to maybe pick your brain a little bit. I see Rich's hand. Rich, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Whitney. That's a great presentation. And I actually have three items.
You, sucker.
Sorry for that. I have three items. I'll try to move through quickly. Number one, you had mentioned access to affordable pharmaceuticals as one issue when the grocery store is closed. So one question would be, how do the goals address that? The second item I would want to bring up, very happy to see City Councilor Asiati here. Thank you for showing up. And so my next two questions relate to City Council. How do we get this presentation to City Council? And then my third item would be, what specific steps can the City of Westminster take to help alleviate this? You have the City of Westminster listed as a partner, but what specific steps can we advise City Council and staff on moving forward?
Hi, Rich. Great seeing you. Rich sits on our communications and marketing committee for Growing Home.
Yeah, nice to see you, Whitney. Thank you.
Always good to see your face. So I'm going to go through these one by one. The pharmaceutical access, that is still kind of an open question. It is on our list of goals to be able to have a grocery store that includes a pharmacy like the big box stores often do. Whether pragmatically that's going to be something that we can actually do is kind of an open question still. We've seen that in the other, community grocers, community co-ops that are similar to what we're looking at. Those typically don't have the capacity to also support a pharmacy, and the licensure, the professional licensure that is required that goes along with that is considerably complicated, right? And so it is still on our list of goals to be able to build a grocery store that has a pharmacy in it. I don't, however, know if in the long run that's going to be something that we'll be able to really meet. And so this question of, the price of pharmaceutical drugs is going to continue to be an issue that I think as a city that we're going to have to look at and address, and potentially as a state as well. The last legislative session, our state legislature approved a bill to create a board that would basically control the cost of pharmaceutical drugs statewide. But where that is right now, what's happening with that is kind of up in the air. It's not entirely clear. And so I think that's, I would bounce it right back to you as if there are ideas, and ways that y'all think that we could address the issue of those medical costs. We would certainly be open to having conversations about that, because I'm very nervous that we will, even if we manage to create a successful grocery store, that it's not going to be able to incorporate a pharmacy. So we'll sort of have to see. As far as City Council, I would be glad to present to City Council as soon as possible. However, the third question that you had was the steps, in terms of, what can the Inclusivity Board do, or, impress upon City Council to try and do to act around this issue. The reason that we didn't come before this, the Inclusivity Board months ago, because obviously we've been working on this since last year, was because I don't have a particularly concrete ask for you right now. We don't have a very concrete ask for city council. And part of it is because, we're still very much in the research phases. So we're trying to figure out what we can accomplish, how. And I think that there will be a number of ways eventually, but we're not entirely there yet. We're still in this sort of like research and development phase where we're trying to figure out what's even feasible. And then if it's feasible, how do we implement it, right? So we are working with, one of our partners is Minson G, who is a kind of expert on food co-ops, and she works for the Rocky Mountain Employee Ownership Center, which is all about creating cooperative businesses where workers are basically own the business together, which is the best way to really build economic wealth of people, especially if they're in manual or unskilled labor kinds of fields. And she is actually doing a feasibility study for us to figure out, is this actually a feasible project idea, right? If we create a food co-op for profit in this town, in this neighborhood, is it going to be sustainable in the long term? Is it actually going to bring in money? Because if it's not, we need to know that up front. And it doesn't mean that we don't create a grocery store. It means maybe we create a nonprofit grocer, right? Something that can take in outside funds to help sustain it. And so we're kind of waiting still to see what feasibility looks like and what the structure will need to be based on the kind of the results of that study. And then the other piece of this as well is, we don't right now have startup capital, right? We're looking for space. That Walmart is still empty, right? We could potentially partner with this city and say, let's go in on this together. We also have our community garden. I was just there this afternoon. It's blazing hot. Not a good day to be out there, but that's where I was. And our community garden sits on city land, and it is a collaboration between Growing Home and the city of Westminster. I worked with city staff today on that. So it is a possibility that the city could be part of this project. We just kind of need to continue to do this research and development and figure out what that looks like. The collaboration that we've had so far up until this point is really, there are select folks on city staff who we have relationships with, who we've been just kind of talking to about what this issue is, what the city approach has been so far, if any, and how we might be able to collaborate in the future. Really, it started with us just wanting to make sure the city isn't going to throw away a bunch of money on a big corporate, like a big box corporate store again, right? Like we didn't want that to happen. But I think that it's kind of open at this point. We're trying to get more information before we say, we're ready to make a firm ask.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for those responses.
Yeah. Other questions or comments for Whitney before we move forward? Okay, Whitney, again, thank you. I feel like this is definitely something that has been a priority for our discussions over the past, I would say, year or so. Seth, did you have something?
I have one question, which just occurred to me.
Sure.
Do you have an estimate of when those concrete asks might start to become concrete?
I think it'll probably be within the next 6 months.
Okay.
And we are doing, I was talking about that kind of like longer term goal of creating our own community owned grocery store. But those shorter term solutions also might be a place where it might make sense for us to collaborate. So we've then the three that we've narrowed it down to are working on improving the offerings and just general improvements to the corner stores that are in the neighborhood. Some of them could use more refrigeration, more, shelving so that they could offer more local fresh produce, right? That's something that the city could help out on, right? Getting those stores connected to services to make sure that they can, enroll in SNAP and EBT to be able to accept food stamps type programs and double up food bucks, all of those really important incentive programs. That would be a way that we could ask the city to collaborate on. The other two options are creating a mobile market and then a discounted cost grocery delivery service. Folks are familiar probably with like HelloFresh and other kinds of like, you can get it, you order it online, and then it just shows up at your door, kind of grocery service. Folks in the community said that they would use that, but those are very expensive. So there are local organizations that have grocery delivery programs like that actually use local small farmers that are based in Colorado, which would be great, except that those cost about the same. And so there are, partnership opportunities where if we were to get some grant money to say, you know what, we're going to pay a certain amount of money so that people in this neighborhood who are sort of income qualified can access that discount so that they're not paying the same amount for their groceries, but they're able to, really take advantage of that. That might be another option. So we're still researching which among those three is really the one that's going to be the most viable and have the biggest bang for our buck. But I think eventually, within the next few months, we're going to be able to narrow it down to just one of those. And at that point, also, we may be able to come back to the city and say, okay, we're ready for your partnership and we're going to make a big chunky ask.
Whitney, you have a standing invitation to please keep us posted and informed on these pieces, and more specifically how we can help make these items actionable and help you realize the great work that you're all doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Really, really appreciate your time, y'all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shoot me an email or give me a call if you have other questions that come up in the meantime. And Rich and Bev, I will see you very soon.
Yeah. Bev,
Thank you
please.
so much. Whitney, I just wanted to really give you a big thank you for carving out time in your schedule tonight to be able to join us. I know I've been after you for months, trying to say, ask you for you or some of the community group to make an appearance. I'm really happy that you were able to do this tonight, and we thank you very much. You did a great job.
Thank you. Wonderful. All right. Well, have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Okay, moving on to old business, meeting minutes for our April meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the April meeting minutes from last month?
So move. This is
All
Rich.
right. I have a motion. Is there a second? Okay, I see Doug's hand, so it's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no movement for discussion, all in favor of accepting the April meeting minutes, please verbally or physically indicate.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Hearing no opposition, so moved. Thank you all. We have a special guest. Obviously, Mayor Pro Tem DeMott could not be with us tonight, and Councillor Azadi has decided to step in and support us. We are so happy you're here, Councillor. Thank you for being here, and certainly welcome. We know that our group has been of interest to you sometime, and we appreciate you joining us. And typically we have Mayor Pro Tem just give us kind of overall updates from the city level, or if you just want to say a few words, that's totally fine, not to put you on the spot, but welcome, and the virtual / hybrid floor is yours.
Well, thanks for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you all for having me. I've been trying to get to these. This is the first one I could make, and it was the first one that I needed to make. So it was a good alignment there. I've loved everything you guys have done. I've been watching you from afar, and I am just so happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you very much. We're really, really grateful for you, and we appreciate your certainly representation of our community and all the work you're doing. So if something comes up, feel free to join in the conversation as you see fit.
Yes, thank you. And just there's one thing on the grocery.
Please.
So I think you may have all been watching, but last week we are moving towards bringing on Marzick Fine Foods grocery store. Are you all aware of this? In the downtown Westminster area? So there's a grocery store coming in the downtown area. It's not in South Westminster, but we need food everywhere, right? So there's a food desert in many places. that place being one of them. And so this is a grocery store. The owner has a lot of history in Westminster, family here and so forth. So there will be a new grocery store opening there pretty soon. And just want to highlight that South Westminster is an area, is the priority in my head so when we talk about food deserts, that's definitely something that needs to happen. I'm so happy to hear that Growing Home has been working on this on a non-market driven approach, because I think that's the key here, right? Is that most of this is market driven, but there are non-market driven activities, which is what Growing Home is trying to engineer, right? That we need, that can help us get through this. So I'm happy to hear that there's a feasibility study, and we'll see how that goes.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, I know a lot of you have been offline or online working diligently on your own projects on behalf of the Inclusivity Board. So we want to move into new business. One that has come up, I know a group of individuals came together to talk a little bit about the diaper and menstrual product tax. And so I will open the floor up to a representative from that group to speak, please.
Oh, Megan, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I'll give a brief update on the diaper and menstrual product tax gathering that we had. We looked a little bit at Aurora and Denver, which are the two other municipalities locally that are that have removed the municipal tax for diapers and menstrual products, and are kind of trying to compare what the impact on the city of Westminster would be versus what the impact has been on, like, for instance, Aurora is about 4 times our size, right? So we can't kind of look at it and say it's a perfect case study for what we might be looking at. But we're trying to put together just some basic numbers. Michelle's reaching out to council members in both Aurora and Denver to talk to them about the process of how they got it passed through their councils and the impact it's had on the cities, both good and bad. And we're going to be working on something to put together before budget planning for council. We're focusing on council's priority of thrift and how this might impact that. We're looking at whether removing the municipal tax for diapers and menstrual products and incontinence products as well, if that would drive people to do their shopping just across the border of a different city, if it would be significant enough to do that, and if that would bring then a full grocery shopping into the city of Westminster that might have happened in Thornton or North Glen or Broomfield or Denver. And we're also looking at if that money, and there's this idea that the money that people save from that, even though it's not significant to a lot of people in the scheme of things, if it's significant enough to the individuals who are saving it, that they'll be putting it back into the economy somehow. So I just tried to put together some brief numbers, and everybody is an individual, so there's nothing that we can pinpoint, but it looks like on average, in Westminster municipal tax alone, not in full sales tax, but the average family per diaper wearer would save $4.16 per month. The average adult with incontinence would save up to $6 a month, and the average person who had their period would save 60 cents to $1 a month just on Westminster tax. And so if you put some of this together and say maybe you've got 2 kids with diapers, maybe you've got, I'm sorry, can you all still see and hear me?
Yes.
I can't see you anymore, but I'll just continue. I don't know what happened on my computer, but if you put some of this together, you could be talking, an easy $10, $15 a month that families could be putting back into the economy, and in ways as simple as being able to afford to buy more bread or milk or other grocery products for their families that would bring, more revenue into the city. So looking at all of that, and again, connecting with council members in Aurora and Denver, and we're hoping to have something within the month put together to propose to council.
Great. Thank you for all of your work. I know you've been putting a lot of research in. There may be some confusion because I know some people are like, well, isn't the state passing this? But this is specific again to our municipality, to the city of Westminster, to obviously even save some more money on that end. So.
Exactly. The state's getting rid of simply the state sales tax, and the municipalities are able to decide if they want to keep theirs or not. Westminster's municipal sales tax rate, I'm sure everyone knows, but it's 3.85%. So that's the portion we're talking about.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions? So it sounds like we're continuing to gather information and we'll possibly have additional updates at the June meeting, Megan?
Yes.
Okay. Jillian, I saw your hand, please.
I had some spare time, and so I learned that it is really hard to try and look up what areas bring in taxes and where those taxes come from. But I was able to find New Jersey as a state apparently was one of the states that repealed menstrual product tax way back in 2005. So they were actually one of the first places that came up in my unprofessional Google searches in terms of who has data about what actually happens to the money when you repeal a tax like this. So I can give you all the link to the PDF that I found, and I'm not an economist and nor am I a mathematician, but it does seem that it saves a significant amount of money for the lowest income people who would be affected by this. Higher income earners, not so much, but they do benefit from it. And what stood out to me in looking at the study is that while, yes, there is a quote unquote loss of revenue from those taxes, overall money brought in by the state from sales tax increased. So in terms of we're not going to be getting the tax from these products anymore, but it doesn't look like it would be a budget loss. Like the state wouldn't have less money over time. And so that just, Douglas was the one who brought up the fact that that might be an argument against repealing this particular tax. And I just thought that would be an easy counter argument in terms of saying, well, yes, you might not be getting taxes from these products, but you'll be getting taxes from other products that people will buy with the money that they're saving.
Thank you. Thank you for that context. Any other comments or questions for this group? Thank you, committee. We appreciate your work on this and look forward to seeing how this progresses as well. Moving into library staff discussion. So Doug had reached out and Doug and I had a little bit of an exchange back and forth about maybe some potential opportunities for growth specific to access at our libraries. And I'll let Doug have the floor. Doug, please.
Thanks. So this came up in a conversation that I was having with my wife, actually, who's one of the librarians at College Hill. And the library is putting on a program specifically for the Spanish-speaking community. And as they were putting this together, they looked around at each other and realized that there was nobody at the associate level or above who speaks Spanish anymore. They've left, and the people that have come to replace them do not have that skill. And this is true even at Irving Street. None of the staff that work at Irving Street have the ability to speak Spanish. And I think that this is a real problem in being able to service the patrons appropriately. I looked into what Westminster says about their approach to things, and they do offer a bonus of up to $1,500 per year, depending on the employee's level of fluency in Spanish. Specifically Hmong also and some other languages. But there isn't a specific program to promote that. It just kind of sits out there. When I asked what the city's approach was, they said that they follow all state laws and federal laws in their hiring practices. They blind everything so that the race, ethnicity of the candidates are not known as they go through the process, which is fine for trying to achieve DEI along the way, but it doesn't ensure that populations are being served appropriately by people who speak their language. And I'm just wondering what kind of a impact we could have, what kind of recommendations could we make to council to help alleviate this problem so that perhaps they could write into the job descriptions, rather than making it's a bonus to speak Spanish, make it, we need this person to speak Spanish. I would just like for us to run with it from there. I'm open to suggestions, and I don't know where to go next.
And Doug, pardon the interruption, Cody may have some clarifying points on like maybe our city's hiring practices or approaches around specifically retention.
Yeah, so first of all, I happen to co-lead the language access plan implementation in the city, and we take that very seriously and actually have increased our technology and access for community members to talk to the city and get the answers they need in the language that they speak and understand the most clearly. Significant things, there's a whole bunch of technology. We also expanded the bilingual merit pay program significantly. And I would say many job descriptions say Spanish or Hmong or a second language is preferred. To that end, though, it is also very challenging sometimes currently in this environment to have even enough candidates that meet the qualifications, the minimum qualifications to go through a process to be hired. We're having a real struggle with hiring in general. But I do want to make sure you're aware that there is an entire language access plan, and there's an implementation that's underway, and significant strides have been made in just the last 14 months to move that through. I think if you all remember Angela, it was one of the things that she worked on. Jen Prin in our General Services Department and I have picked up that effort and have moved it along. We've also hired a few communication coordinators in the last 4 months who have a background in language access and what that means in government, specifically municipal government entity. And so they're helping us through things that are starting to get a little bit beyond mine and Jen's experience, education, and contributions. The city has implemented a training program around language access so that all frontline staff, and I think a fair number, I want to say maybe even 100 of our frontline staff. So that means, at recreation centers, they're doing a special training in June just for those who are in rec centers. But like our community assistants downstairs, when you walk through the front door, any of the front desk, building permit folks, our executive assistants in the city manager's office, anybody who's gonna help somebody in a first line phone call or walk through the door has awareness and training on how to get the right person or resource to help get the community member the information that they need. So we take that very seriously. Doug, I happened to see the email that you sent because I also coordinate and work with the internal DEI efforts and the equity action team, which is a small staff team that does some grassroots work around DEI and education. So I saw your email and I would not have understood that that was what you were looking for in the email. So I think maybe that because it went through human resources, there was sort of a disconnect perhaps, because they have a very human resources sort of legal mindset about how and what those things are, as opposed to these are things we do to promote language access in the organization. Does that? So I'm sorry about that. That's I wish I would have known. I could have been more helpful earlier on. And that's not to say that we're doing a great job. It's saying we've made some valiant efforts and we continue to work on it. Our next step is actually to start engaging the community members who need those services the most, to ask them, what do you need? What are the priorities? Another major undertaking is updating signage throughout our organization. Right now, the courthouse is the pilot location because there's so much signage there and so much traffic. And there's a right to interpretation sign. That's one of the first things that will be on that in that building when you walk through the door, as well as every other sign in Spanish and Braille, as well as English.
Cody, thank you for clarifying. So it sounds like maybe policy is kind of, being processed. The real problem at this point is I've heard access at courthouses and I've heard access at like the city hall, many of these places of which our community members may not go to because, if they're going to a courthouse, that's not always a positive implication. And some people are afraid of authorities. So it sounds like going back to, I think Doug's real point was, what are we doing? Libraries are community resources. They're designed to be non-threatening. They're designed to be accessible. What are we doing to create a sense of urgency? Am I correct in this, Doug, in kind of our discussion around how we can bring that access to those areas?
Right. Thank you very much for restating that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate that clarification.
Yeah.
I think that the city's, like I said, always room for improvement. But hiring people is incredible. Like we have like every other state, have a shortage of lifeguards, just basic things that we do all the time. We're having a hard time hiring people. So I do agree with you. We have, they absolutely stretch where their recruitment is. There's a number of Spanish speaking or Spanish publications that have our job postings in them. We network like you cannot believe around these sorts of things. Some of it are things that are outside of our control. And I'm not in any way saying that we can't do better. I don't want you to think that at all. I just want you to know that we are trying with all our might to address these things. Recreation centers is the other one. There's also, just for internal, way more than you need to know. There are non-benefited and benefit employees in the city. So some don't get all of the training. The language access group has actually taken extra steps to make sure that those who would not normally get this training, but are serving in a frontline role, are getting this training. So they know how to, at least if they cannot speak the language, can find a way to help the community member have their service provided in a language that they understand.
So who in the library counts as that frontline staff?
Any of the librarians who are sitting at those desks. I don't know that it's gotten all the way to libraries. I can check on that. I know that maybe some have had some training or have at least been offered the opportunity. We are also making it part of our regular onboarding starting later this summer, I think July, maybe August or September. So each time somebody's onboarded as a new employee, they'll have a language access training session or plug for it and some basics because it's so important.
Thank you. Thank you. Rich, I see your hand, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Cody, I'm curious, are there any affirmative efforts to go into our own Spanish speaking community and then train them to do the job?
I don't believe that there are, and I don't want to misspeak about why that may or may not be.
Can I chime in here real quick?
Please, Counselor.
So first of all, thank you, Douglas, for that question. I think it's an important question. And thank you, Cody. Cody's absolutely right. We are having a lot of hiring issues across the board. But I will say that the city can and should be doing a lot more. We're not doing enough on this. I think it's okay to say that. It's a clear gap. I see it all the time in South Westminster, particularly where there's a higher population of Hispanic people there. And I heard it all the time on the campaign trail that they don't feel welcomed because we don't have staff that speak Spanish. We don't have the signs with that, and I'm glad that I hear the signs are being worked on. But there are a lot of areas, daily life areas, that I think we do have a big gap on. One of the areas that I've felt, we made a big miss just this last week. We just got rid of the DEI, so we had a position to have a DEI officer, a manager, and we got rid of that plan. And I spoke vehemently against that because I think that's so necessary. But in light of that action, what I would like to see, and this is just a suggestion, and it's you guys that will determine if you want to do this or not, but I would love to hear recommendations from this group, from the Inclusivity Board, on how we can fill the gap in spite of that. If what are some ways that the city can do, and then bring that to the city.
Yeah, Counselor, thank you very much for that. It is extremely disheartening to hear that we've decided to take some steps backwards in regards to not really focusing on diversity and inclusivity in this city. That being said, we are here and we will definitely, I think, be empowered to make some recommendations. And Doug, what I'm thinking is maybe looking at the libraries certainly as a space, but maybe it is time to create a committee on this very issue and talk about public space access and outreach. We've had some similar kind of efforts before, but again, this would be a critical need, because I feel like if we have language access at courthouses and city hall, fine, but that's not where a lot of our people will be getting their information. We do, I think, to Rich's point, getting out to the community, making sure that we're listening to their voices so that we can really take those recommendations directly, not only from this board, but to our city council. So Councillor, thank you for just kind of keeping us charged on that.
I'm sorry.
On that piece.
Can
Please,
I just
Cody.
add one more thing?
Yeah.
The only reason the court is getting it first is because they have such a bazillion amount of signs. This is not to eliminate, or it's just there's a prioritization of they needed it soonest. They had the budget. It happened. They will happen in libraries. It will happen in rec centers. I only use them as examples of frontline places because they're moving a little bit faster. That's not because the others are not. There's also, again, a staffing issue throughout all these facilities. The recreation centers are also another huge priority. And certainly the libraries are most important. And we know that because we have programs like Colorado Legal Services happening outside or as part of Irving Street Library. I also want to note that even though the DEI position was eliminated from the budget, there are lots of internal things happening that are working toward that same goal. It just means that there won't be a staff person who would coordinate those efforts. It means it will continue to happen with staff members like me and Kate and others as part of the regular work that we do. There also was a DEI benchmarking study in 2021 that gave a number of recommendations to the staff as an organization, and we're starting to work on those recommendations. There are 7, and also they note that it will take up to 4 years to even get to that through those 7. Just as a reminder, this is an organization of close to 1,500 staff, just under 1,000 full-time employees. So it's a big elephant to start fighting one little toe at a time.
No, thank you, Cody. And of course, there's no implication here. The city staff has done an incredible job, you specifically, and others.
I don't think you're in any way offended. I just want to make sure you
appreciate that.
All the information's on the table. It's not that we're not hiding anything, right?
No, the timing, however, is, as we see an increased awareness around these challenges, it just feels like we need to be putting more effort, more energy, more resources to these things. So, and being strategic, I think, about where our next steps are. I understand the practicality and the prioritization, but I also think community access is a priority. And I think to Doug's point, that was really where we were coming from, right? Like the libraries are a source of community.
Yes, they're a source of community. That's a safe space for people to go. It's a place that has access to information and hardware that they don't have elsewhere. It really is a haven for a lot of people. And I just would like to see it advanced a little bit faster, I guess, knowing how important the libraries are and what role they play. I know that a lot of the job openings get lots of people applying for them, and I don't know about meeting the minimum requirements to think about adding on another requirement. But yes, there are hiring issues everywhere. The library probably isn't one of them, just from my background knowledge about how that works. And so I wonder if that is one place where it's a little bit easier for us to put in some more thought about what kind of skills we would like them to have.
I see Rich's hand and then Megan. Please, Rich.
No, Megan had her hand up before I did.
Oh, okay. Megan, thank you.
Oh, sorry, that's okay. It's slightly off topic, but on the topic of libraries and in line with what you're saying, Doug, I appreciate what you've brought up. But you know, an old thing that I had brought up a couple of times when I had first joined the board is with libraries, having the appropriate folks putting out the appropriate content too, to make sure that the people who are accessing those spaces as their safe spaces, as their havens, are having content that they can connect with and that feels like it was there for them. And I know that there's a lot of well-intentioned heterosexual cis white folk who are putting together, you know, Black History Month stuff to put out and Pride Month stuff to put out. But I really feel passionate, especially in the current climate that we're in with books being banned and all of the schools and libraries, that we need to make sure that the people who that content is about and or for are having say in that content's availability in our public libraries. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with needing to make sure that we're having representation in our staff and on our committees and I want to make it a bigger issue.
It's a great opportunity for this board to help advise in those.
Yeah, Megan, thank you. And I'll let Rich please, and then we'll push this forward.
I'll be brief. Cody, you're on the spot here, but I'll aim right past you, right over your shoulder to City Council.
Yes, okay, I like it.
A budget is a statement of priorities. And to take someone whose primary responsibility is access, equity, and inclusion out of the budget is a statement of priorities, and it's disappointing to say the least. That's all.
Well stated, I think.
Yeah. And I bet he doesn't disagree with you.
Yeah.
Councilor Zadi.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for the discussion. Going back to Doug, thank you for bringing this up. Megan, I think to your point, absolutely. I think it goes back to like land acknowledgement and the things we've been talking through. We really want to be authentic with these things as possible and not keep perpetuating a cycle where we think we know what's right for others, because that's absolutely the cycle we need to break. That being said, Doug, would you feel comfortable maybe creating, it sounds like we have some really strong opportunities, I think, for some planning work off of our main board to do some committee work around these very issues. And I think even rolling in what Megan had talked about specific to the resources that truly reflect the needs of the peoples that they represent. Would you be interested in maybe looking at creating or chairing a committee of such?
Certainly, I'd be happy to do that. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Was there any other further conversation on this before we maybe see if people would be interested? And if you are interested, if you could email Doug and myself and Cody on this committee, but I definitely would love to be a part of that, Doug, and your effort. So I think it's great, worthy work. So other comments or discussions or questions? Okay, Doug, closing points, anything for the good of the group?
I just want to back up what Megan said. It is a lot of very well-intentioned people, well-trained, but not being a part of that community that they're trying to represent or to put together materials for is very challenging. And I certainly agree that what I brought up, expands out into all sorts of inclusion areas, and we need to address all of those.
So maybe part of the committee discussion, but what I mentioned to Justin is this might be a great thing the Inclusivity Board could have a real hand in, is maybe being an advisory group for when those materials or what those materials are, or what programs we could connect with the libraries and have some of these conversations, right? Connect with even the rec centers and see where there's some opportunities. I think that would be a great interaction for the community members, Inclusivity Board, to be helping the organization be better, and would align exactly with what I think your mission is and what this board should and could be doing.
And if nothing else, we can be bringing the right people to the table, per Megan's point.
Right.
Right.
So
thank you.
Cool. Thank you for bringing that up. We do have a break, of course. Feel free to take a break as you see and need to your needs, but we are now at subcommittee reports. Bev, did you have anything you wanted to add to food access? I think that was pretty comprehensive today.
Yes, it certainly was. So no, I do not.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again, Bev, for bringing that awareness to us. I know Refugio also did that, but with hearing from Whitney and hearing all the great work is really affirming to what we've been discussing. So I appreciate you. All right, moving into the safe and welcoming spaces, I will have Piper and et al. Open up to an update for us, please.
Hi, everyone. I sent out a copy of the draft of the presentation, both the slides and the speech. What I probably really need from the rest of you is to make that more businessy, diplomatic, and add numbers. Because this is a project that I would really like the council to pick up. We have it spec'd in such a way where they do not have to pay anything if we do it right. But I want it to be very shiny so that it has the best chance of appealing to the city council.
Piper, do you have a timeline of when you'd like for us to provide feedback so that you can convene the committee again and we can move forward?
If you could get your feedback back to me by the beginning of June, that would be fantastic. Then I can incorporate those and hit a city council meeting in end of June, beginning of July.
Great. So it gives us about 3 weeks to really look over your presentation. All right. Excellent. Thank you for all that work. I want to dig into it, but just looking at it was such a really, I think, thoughtful and very well laid out. So.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Rich, please.
Yeah. Piper, I just wanted to, I did look at it and it looks, I was amazed how diplomatic it was. So really beautiful job. But a couple of meetings ago, you brought up some folks who you knew who said they didn't want to live in Westminster.
Yes.
Because they felt not only unwelcome, they felt a certain level of hatred, maybe.
Yes.
And our discussion around that was sort of, well, they really don't know, and maybe we ought to convince them otherwise. At least that was my takeaway. And that's not our purpose. Our purpose is to advise City Council, is to listen to those people and pass that information on. And I think sort of the way our discussion went was utterly backwards. So that,
Okay.
I've been thinking about that since you brought it up.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate that.
Well, Rich, and we talked about that. I think we may have followed up a little bit. Maybe we didn't do it as clearly, but Piper, we had kind of talked offline a little bit too about how we want to make sure we're not invalidating the voices that are bringing their concerns and experiences to the table, right? And even as well-intended as we all are, sometimes we can get lost in those weeds because we might not see things that other people do. We won't, especially those of us who, you know, are living different lives and doing different things. We may never be exposed to those things based on privilege or based on what have you. So thank you again for that reminder, Rich. We appreciate that.
Yes. And I appreciate that very much, Rich. We're all imperfect beings trying to do the best we can with what we have. And, you know, I may get cranky, but I have a great deal of respect for all of you. And I appreciate all of your perspectives. So thank you. Which is why I'm bringing this to you, so you can make it better.
Thanks, Piper. Megan, I see your hand, and then Doug.
Yeah, your draft was great, Piper. I'll get you some feedback shortly, but I don't want to encourage you to wait any longer, but you may have seen on the agenda, the soonest I could get Inclusive Journeys to present to us as a full board was July. That was the soonest that they were available. And I just, from my meeting with them, have this sense that when we all are together, like that we're gonna have some really cool ideas as to how we can collaborate. And while they have their free resources right now, those might be really good things and that collaboration to put in front of council. Like, look, we've got these things lined up that don't have to be paid for because we have a partner who's helping with that. So again, not encouraging you to wait longer, but just
we could easily wait until like another good time to do it would be like the beginning of August, because it's right before that big festival where we're getting people involved, and it's a possibility to introduce then. So yes, and I'm very impressed with Inclusive Journeys, and I'm very much looking forward to listening to their presentation. I read everything you sent me. Thank you so much for setting that up. So yeah, we could wait till August if we wanted to. If we want to wait for Inclusive Journeys, and I'm okay with that. If we want to wait till their presentation comes first.
Thanks, Piper. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate that reminder. And of course, as we meet, I think it would still behoove all of us, and my recommendation would be just to, you know, convene a committee once we get the Inclusivity Board's feedback on the draft that you've sent, Piper, and then determine some actual timelines around all of that. So good thinking. Doug, I'm sorry, please.
Oh, that's okay. It's just a quick question. Would you mind sending out the PowerPoint itself rather than just a PDF of it in case we wanted to make comments or suggestions in it?
Sure, I can do that. No problem.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, friends.
Yeah,
Piper.
I have a question for Piper or anybody else that was present last month at the meeting, because I missed it and maybe this was discussed then. But so you've already been approved to speak at City Council, Piper, is that right?
No.
Oh,
Not yet,
okay.
anyway. This is,
All right, I guess that I misinterpreted what was going on then. But and if that is the case, then I'm just wondering, and maybe Obi can give us some guidance here. So what has to happen in order for, or what needs to happen in between this kind of discussion and you actually being able to do that?
Well, it would be a matter, I think, Bev, of, we're an advisory committee. So what I would say is this committee would make a recommendation to the Inclusivity Board. The Inclusivity Board will vote formally on that recommendation to determine what our next steps are. In the past, what we've done is if the Inclusivity Board approves by a majority, for example, of the presentation that is finalized by Piper and Friends Committee, then we would advise to go to public comment or public hearing or try to get on the agenda and present what we feel is the most appropriate on behalf of the Inclusivity Board, if that is voted upon. But thank you for reminding us, Bev, that we haven't formalized anything as a board yet. This is just more of an exploratory phase.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, did that help clarify?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Just to add one thing to that, real
Please.
quick. It would be nice too to get more of our boards in front of council on a regular cadence. I'm sure you guys have a lot of things you'd like to talk to council about. So that's something definitely on my mind on trying how to figure out how we can get more. So the liaison on council brings it back to council as to what was talked about in these meetings. But I think once in a while it would be nice to get, this board, for example, you guys can pick your speakers and you all come out and give us a presentation on what you have been working on.
Thank you, Councillor. We've long been talking about, I think, trying to figure out ways in which we can maybe join study sessions and be like ongoing representatives too. We understand, everyone who's done an ambassadorship has done a great job. That being said, it's always nice to have ongoing discussion with, all of you, because that's who truly we try to serve, you on behalf of our community. So great. Megan, please.
Someone brought it up in email today, and it's a question that I have had too regarding the land acknowledgement process, but what is the budget that we have as a committee or as a board, and how do we access that, or who approves where we spend that? Because I think both, with this Safe Spaces initiative and with land acknowledgement, there are areas, especially land acknowledgement and compensation to an Indigenous person for their assistance. It's like hard to take the next step when it's a question like, do we have some money to spend? Do we not? Like, how do we do that? Who decides it?
We have been allocated a budget, and Cody, would you be able to send out a budget in the next few weeks to the board? I don't know if
in the next few weeks, yes. It'll take me a bit of research. Because it's been a while since
Could we maybe put that as an agenda item for our next meeting? Would that be okay, Megan? And then we can have that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, not just looking at the budget, but how we utilize it too.
Yeah, and I know it's not been utilized at all in the past few years because we know where we've all been. So I think there's some lost opportunities that we could really pick up on, to your point, Megan. Thank you.
And just as an immediate response, Megan, I don't think that there's parameters around it. We would, depending on the amount and what it's for, because you're a committee advisory board to the council, you want to check in with them to make sure that they were supportive of that, right? But I don't think there's things you can and cannot do with it. I mean, within reasonable local government also rules, but the limitations are not like just for certain things.
Yeah, many years ago, I know we offered community grants and things like that we helped delegate. So sure, we'll get that information at the next agenda meeting. Thank you. Thank you all. Any other input on this topic? Oh, Cody, please.
Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
I just have it, not this one.
Oh, okay. All right. No worries. Okay, I think ambassadors, we've talked kind of about the structuring and the committees. Miguel, do you have any police community board updates for us.
Yeah, thanks. I did attend the last board meeting, and I think it was really neat. They highlighted the police worn cameras and sort of the technology there and how they're utilizing those. I think they've really gotten, a lot more comfortable with them, understand how important they are, obviously to protect the police, but also I think it's helping in a way protect the community as well. So I think it would be great to see if they could come and maybe demo those. And there's a presentation that was given by one of the police officers. So not sure if that's something that would maybe be interested in for the board, but I think there would be some things to like learn and kind of understand sort of the direction the policing's going with these body worn cameras.
Great. Would people be interested in that? It seems pretty fascinating to me. Miguel, would you be able and or willing to reach out and see if we could get a representative in the next few months on our board?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could potentially be Chief too, if he just wants to come and connect with us again. I'll reach out and kind of see what he thinks. But I think it would be valuable for us to learn more about them and, kind of that way we could convey the message out to our network as well and kind of just, let people know. Because I think there's a little bit of a stigma around the cameras, and just seeing the presentation and the technology and understanding it from their perspective really kind of helped me realize how much they can help protect the community too.
Great. No, it sounds like a great topic that I know several of us would be interested in.
I have another meeting coming up at 7:30, so I apologize. I have to jump off. So,
Rich, thank you very much for being here tonight. We appreciate your input and time. Okay, we've talked a little bit about committee needs as Doug has brought the topic up. Were there anything else for the good of the order that we want to think about at this time that we aren't already kind of working through? Okay, we'll go into a request that Cody has indicated we have. So
the city has a system or schedule of proclamations. They're recurring, some more than others, and some come through request. But Inclusivity Board has 3 that are in the immediate future that have been yours before. So I want to make sure, check in with you if you all still want to go forward with them, and then also to make sure representatives from the board will be there on the 2 evenings that those proclamations would be presented. The first 2 would be presented on May 23rd, Immigrant Heritage Month and Pride Month. They're both June celebrations. So we would need, if you all are in agreement for both, then who would also be there to accept on that evening. And then the other one is Juneteenth. And so that one would be presented on June 13th because Juneteenth is June 19th. So yay or nay for yes, do them, no, don't. Who will be there? Those are my.
All right. Do we have since we'll formalize, do we have a motion to accept these proclamations? Donna, I'm sorry, you're muted, Donna. I saw your hand.
I will move that.
Okay, thank you, Donna. It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Do we get to hear or see a copy of what's going to be said in these proclamations prior to them being proclaimed?
I can send you the draft of them this evening because they were due yesterday. Sorry.
Would we have any, if there's any input about?
Yeah, but I need it.
You need
tomorrow.
it soon.
Yeah,
okay.
Very soon, yeah.
So there would be a real short turnaround time for us if Cody sends those tonight. We'd have to give feedback tomorrow around any kind of changes that would need to be made. Is that so?
And what I can also do is send the agenda memo, which is the background. The proclamations are, I'm not rewriting either one of them. I'm using any of the three. I'm using what's been used in the past. A lot of what the counselors say at the dais come from their own research, but also from what's in the agenda memos. So I will send the both for all three to you. And then just any feedback is just, I'm really sorry. We just moved up all our deadlines. And so I'm under the wire.
No worries. Donna, please.
Yes, so I'm hearing you say, Cody, it's pretty much the same language and wording that has been done in the past. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And as a member of this board and having been on this board for a while, I would say that that's always been appropriate. I feel, at least personally, and I think the board has accepted that. So if that makes people feel better, just know that it's pretty much what has been past practice.
Yeah, and I would feel good keeping the motions as are, and just with the understanding anyone who wants to contribute to any wordsmithing to those would have to do so by tomorrow if the board so approves.
That's fine.
Right. Any other points of discussion? What I guess we could do is let's just indicate via email if anyone can attend the representation of May 23rd. That's the most immediate. June 13th, we still have a little bit of time. We do have a meeting in between that a few days before, so we can decide if we haven't had a representative at that point, but we will need someone for May 23rd. And off the top of my head, I think I could be there. So, okay, hearing no further points of discussion, Seth? Oh. We've got a motion and we've seconded about the proclamations. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, hearing no opposed, so moved. Oh, I'm sorry, Bev, were you saying something?
No, that was me. I'm abstaining.
Maggie.
I don't want to vote on something that I haven't seen. I apologize, but I'm abstaining.
No reason to apologize.
I'm also abstaining. I would really like to read the Pride one before I say that I agree.
Great, understood. We have 2 abstentions. Do we still have a quorum to proceed?
Yes.
Okay, we do have a quorum to proceed. But please know that for those of you, even in your abstentions, if you please would be able to look at the language tomorrow. If there are critical issues, we can always sort of reconvene via email if we need to and pull back and figure out what we need to do.
I can definitely look at it tomorrow. So
Okay,
yeah,
great.
if you send it to me, I can get it. I can turn it around and get it back.
Yeah, Jillian also indicated, I believe, in the chat.
Yeah, I'll look at the Juneteenth one. Sorry, that's my go.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's look if there are critical glaring issues. I'm not a voting member on this board unless I need to be. So if there are issues, then we can always push to reconvene this. I think we're just really looking at it for the sake of the timing, correct?
I'm really sorry.
So
If other transitions happened, I would have gotten these to you, but there was they belonged in a different department until last week. Sorry. And the deadlines moved up at the same time. So I'm very sorry.
no worries. No. I think, yeah, there are definitely some things we could do, but please wordsmith it. Please let us know. And again, reach out if you feel like absolutely we should not move forward with something. And then I can reconvene via email if we need to on a vote. Okay? All right, good. We are at time, past time. Anything else for the good of the order? Well, friends, thank you so much for your time and your energy. Councilor Azadi, thank you for being here tonight. We know you're very busy and you're doing a lot of great work on the behalf of our community. So just thank you for being here. And all of you, thank you so much for the great points of conversation. Lots of good information tonight. And we will look forward to seeing you at our next regular meeting on June 11th, the second Wednesday of June. So with that said, we will adjourn at about 7:34. Thank you all.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Justin, what's your new email?
It's
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Davis at mywps.org. It's the same. It's